Hey guys, welcome to Y&R Daily Update YouTube channel. Today's topics. Victoria had never been the kind of mother who waited for answers to arrive by themselves. The moment she sensed that Claire's plans for Los Angeles were accelerating beyond simple wanderlust, a switch flipped. The risk calculus changed again when whispers hardened into certainty. Claire was pregnant. The revelation didn't land like a neat headline. It rippled through the Newman matriarch's instincts, summoning a protective reflex sharpened by years of corporate warfare and personal scars. Los Angeles, with its distance, anonymity, and endless reinvention, became both a haven and a wild card. For Claire, it promised a clean slate with Holden, a man whose steadiness looked like an exit ramp from chaos. For Victoria, it threatened to pry her daughter out of the orbit she could watch and influence. The result was inevitable pursuit. When the Newman jet lifted from the Genoa city tarmac, with Victoria laser-focused, Nick calibrating the family's next move, and Sharon balancing compassion with caution, the three formed a pragmatic triad, each carrying a different piece of concern. Victoria carried blood, deep fear. Nick carried common sense and strategy. Sharon carried the therapist's intuition that secrets, when cornered, either confess or combust. Claire had not intended Los Angeles to be a declaration of war. To her, it was a geography of clarity. She and Holden, whose quiet resolve had been forged far from Newman boardrooms, imagined a modest start, a short-term sublet, a neighborhood where their names meant nothing, a coffee shop that could serve as a neutral ground for conversations too delicate for Genoa City's omnipresent rumor mill. Pregnancy altered the stakes, but not the desire. The child turned vague hope into concrete urgency. Suddenly, budgets, insurance, and timelines mattered more than the tug-of-war of grand narratives. Yet, even as Claire embraced that adult calculus, the echoes of old battles trailed her. Kyle's lingering attachment and Victoria's skepticism toward Holden threatened to collapse new boundaries back into old patterns. Claire understood the optics. To some, she was running away, but in her mind, she was making the first adult decision that didn't treat her as a supporting character in the Newman epic. Holden, for his part, wore responsibility like a well-fitted jacket. He wasn't naive about Victoria's power or Kyle's resources, and he didn't romanticize escape. What he offered Claire was not a fairy tale, but a plan. Medical appointments lined up in LA, a part-time job he could start quickly, and a savings map drawn with the strict efficiency of someone who'd learned to survive without corporate safety nets. He knew that trust would be the currency most fiercely contested. Victoria's doubt felt personal, but he accepted it as structural. A mother's scrutiny amplified by a Newman's radar for weak links. Holden's smartest move wasn't grandstanding. It was transparency. He encouraged Claire to meet her mother in daylight, in public, with the smell of espresso, and the clatter of cups diluting the intensity. A cafe could be an ally. It slowed the tempo of confrontation. Back in Genoa City, Audra was playing a different game against a different clock. She had invested time, ego, and emotional capital in Nate Hastings, believing that boldness could preempt ambiguity. Her final offer wasn't just about love. It was about narrative control. Audra envisioned a future where she and Nate became the power couple who mastered hospital politics and corporate alliances with the same swagger. But the moment she demanded definition, Nate's silence spoke in paragraphs. He didn't collapse into flattery, nor escalate into conflict. He paused. A physician's pause. A cautious man's pause. To Audra, who had risen by moving first and gambling hard, the pause felt like betrayal disguised as prudence. The irony was brutal. Her strategy had always been to refuse waiting rooms. Now the man she wanted kept her in one. Audra's veneer hardened. She pivoted to contingency planning, spread her risk across professional ventures, and framed her ultimatum as a moment of moral clarity. If Nate couldn't say yes now, she told herself, then she would force the world to see that she had better places to point her ambition. Kyle's reckoning arrived even more bluntly. Claire's sudden relocation to Los Angeles with Holden didn't merely bruise his pride. It rewrote his assumptions about what strings his name could still pull. He had believed proximity and history were leverage. Instead, he was left arguing with empty rooms and secondhand updates. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. Watching Claire exercise agency cut more deeply than he expected because it complicated everything he told himself about the past. That timing had been off. That conversations could fix what silence had broken. That he could ease back into her life because the door had never fully shut. Now the door had not only shut, it had boarded itself up and moved zip codes. Kyle cycled through predictable phases. He was indignant, then introspective, then strategic. Would he show up in LA unannounced and force a confrontation? The worst version of himself wanted that. The wiser version recognized that forcing entry into someone else's new beginning rarely makes them reconsider. It usually makes them run faster. If Kyle is to remain relevant in this triangle, he'll need to recalibrate from intrusion to integrity, showing he can respect a boundary without surrendering interest, and that his concern for Claire isn't possessiveness in a new suit. The Newman jet landing threaded all these arcs into a single scene. A cafe in Los Angeles, sunlight warming the front tables, the dull roar of traffic humming like an underscored line of tension. Victoria didn't arrive as a CEO, making threats. She arrived as a mother who wanted to see her daughter's eyes when they discussed a man she didn't trust. Claire didn't arrive as a runaway. She arrived as a pregnant woman staking a claim on adulthood. The conversation, cautious, layered, and too important for subtext, touched 3 points that matter most going forward. First, Kyle. Victoria weighed the safety of familiarity against the danger of unfinished business, and Claire had to articulate whether history with Kyle represented comfort or confusion. Second, Holden trust here would not be declared, but earned. Victoria would probe his stability, his work, his family, his willingness to put Claire first when the child arrived and things got hard. Third, romance in the long arc. Victoria with hard-won scars would push Claire to parse the difference between a man who looks good in the honeymoon glow and a partner who shows up at 3 a.m. when the baby won't sleep and the world feels too heavy. Sharon's presence mattered in subtler ways. She understands that mothers and daughters often talk through each other when fear is louder than words. Sharon could translate, steering Victoria away from executive interrogation and guiding Claire away from defensive absolutes. Nick, reliable as gravity, could keep the conversation tethered to logistics, prenatal care, support networks, the practicalities of 2 cities and a family name that magnifies every choice into headline scale. And while no one said it out loud, they all understood a further truth. If Holden met them with openness instead of bravado, if he invited structure instead of resisting it, he could turn skeptics into cautious allies. Meanwhile, Audra's storyline runs as a counterpoint, a study in how timing and trust fracture when ambition outruns reciprocity. If Nate continues to delay, Audra will convert the emotional sting into momentum elsewhere, perhaps aligning with movers in Los Angeles or tightening alliances in Genoa City that remind Nate what indecision costs. Her best play is paradoxically the hardest for her. Resist the impulse to punish and instead demonstrate altitude, the kind that attracts rather than corners. If she can show she is a center of gravity rather than a storm front, Nate may come toward her by choice instead of retreating from pressure. What makes this cluster of plots compelling isn't just the air miles between Genoa City and Los Angeles. It's the thematic symmetry. Claire and Holden test whether love can draft a blueprint faster than fear can draw red lines. Victoria tests whether protection can evolve into partnership without feeling like surrender. Kyle tests whether remorse can mature into respect. Audrey tests whether agency can be shared without losing edge. Nate tests whether caution is wisdom or camouflage. And in the middle of all that, a child, barely a flicker on an ultrasound, quietly resets the stakes for everyone. By the time the cafe meeting breaks, nothing will be fully settled, but the shapes of future conflicts will sharpen. If Victoria sees evidence that Holden has made tangible preparations for Claire and the baby, housing, work hours that accommodate appointments, an emergency plan, her skepticism can cool into supervision rather than opposition. If Claire demonstrates that Los Angeles is chosen alignment rather than reactionary escape, her mother might shift from chaser to co-architect, offering support that respects boundaries. If Sharon can coax both into framing this as a series of shared commitments rather than a zero-sum custody of influence, the family might avoid a public spectacle. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. And if Nick can anchor next steps, setting up LA contacts for medical care, ensuring security without surveillance, the practical path forward can coexist with emotional truth. Yet the alternative outcomes simmer close by. If Holden bristles at oversight and treats reasonable inquiry as insult, Victoria will redouble scrutiny and push for leverage that could alienate Claire. If Kyle misreads the moment and tries to escalate presence rather than earn trust from a respectful distance, he'll transform sympathy into suspicion. If Audra turns Nate's pause into a crusade of retribution, she may win the battle of appearances while losing the war of credibility. In soaps, timing is a character, and right now it favors those who can move decisively without mistaking speed for wisdom. For viewers, the promised visual of mother and daughter facing each other across a Los Angeles cafe table is more than a setting. It's the map legend for the next arc. The conversation will toggle between heart and homework, between how Claire feels with Holden at dawn and what their bank account looks like at dusk. Between Victoria's catalog of fears and the single question that matters. Does this relationship make Claire's life bigger and safer or smaller and riskier? Expect callbacks to Kyle, who represents the gravitational pull of a past that never fully settled. Expect a measured assessment of Holden, who represents the possibility that a life can be built outside the soundstage of Newman family drama. And expect above all, the quiet moment when Claire touches her stomach and the subtext becomes text. This isn't just about romance anymore. It's about building a family with the right scaffolding. Love, yes, but also patience, work, humility, and a circle of support that knows when to step in and when to step back. If the cafe yields mutual concessions, a check-in schedule, shared medical updates, clear boundaries around Kyle, then Los Angeles becomes an experiment the whole family can survive. If it doesn't, the flight path between GC and LA will turn into a corridor for escalating skirmishes. Either way, the show has smartly positioned its pieces. A Newman mother forced to balance instinct with evidence. A daughter determined to write her own chapter. A partner who must translate intent into steady action. An ex who must evolve to stay relevant. And a power player who must learn that the strongest ultimatum is the one you're prepared to walk away from. The romance is just the spark. The family and the future are the fire. There are moments on The Young and the Restless where the dialogue doesn't need to be so much as to simply place the characters in the right place. Give them a conflicting goal and let the viewer's heart rate accelerate. The plot lines surrounding Victoria, Claire, Holden, and the subplots surrounding Kyle and Audra are prime examples. The dramatic argument between Victoria and Claire is more than just a mother-daughter confrontation. It's a test of trust, control, personal freedom, and the price of love on the threshold of adulthood. From the moment Victoria realizes Claire is moving her life toward Los Angeles, her suspicion of Holden begins to form like a small scratch on glass. Fuzzy, annoying, but with just a little bit of friction, it will crack into permanent fissures. From Victoria's perspective, Holden's arrival is more than just a new relationship. It was an uncontrollable variable. A man whose background, standards, ambitions, courage in the face of pressure, and especially the level of security he provided. Claire, Victoria was the type of person who had been taught by life that trust is easy, but believing the truth is hard. So her instinct was to verify, monitor, and if necessary, intervene. Her decision to accompany Nick and Sharon on Newman's jet showed that she did not want to chase in the sense of being unwise, but rather follow with a clear strategy. Nick was a calm counterweight. He often questioned consequences about practical matters, security, schedules, the balance between respecting Claire's freedom and protecting her from risk. Sharon added another dimension, psychological understanding. Untangling the emotional knots between mother and daughter, helping the conversation not turn into a Cold War. The trio is a stable triangle: power, reason, and emotion. But any triangle is only balanced when each corner knows when to stop. In Los Angeles, Holden moves at his own pace. Slower, more subtle, conquering not with grand commitments, but with small, intimate, real experiences. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. He takes Claire around the city to his favorite places. A coffee shop where morning sunlight filters through the glass windows. A slope that drops down to the beach in the late afternoon. An independent movie theater with the smell of old popcorn and crooked posters. A little noun corner of a park lined with ancient trees. And even a late-night diner that only turns on yellow lights and serves a few simple but delicious dishes. These seemingly trivial coordinates map Holden's soul. There is patience, observation, and appreciation for the small things. When these pieces are put together, Claire sees more than just a city. She finds a rhythm to life, a kind of peace that Genoa City has never offered her. And so, she feels special, cherished, completely here and now without anyone reminding her of the past or forcing her into the future. But that feeling of being cherished can easily cause boundaries to slip. Claire can get caught up in the joy, in the beautiful moments, in the feeling of peace that Holden brings, so that a kiss suddenly becomes the most natural consequence. And if the Los Angeles night is mild enough, long enough, with enough safety signals, she might go further, placing her trust and body in Holden's arms. For her, it is an adult decision, a decision of the present. For Victoria, it could be a sign that Claire is being swept away before she can see the whole picture. From here, the conflict between mother and daughter can easily erupt. Claire needs to be recognized for her right to decide, while Victoria needs strong enough guarantees to let go. The key is not whether Holden is good in the abstract moral sense, but suitable to what Claire is facing: pressure, past, trauma, and the need to build a new circle of safety. Set at a cafe in LA, The atmosphere is thick with layers of meaning. Victoria is not there to stop, but it is hard to hide her scrutinizing gaze. Claire sits opposite, wanting to protect herself and the Nant relationship. Sharon can add in light but powerful words. Nick can diffuse tension by dragging the conversation to the concrete checkup schedule. Where she lives, work, doctor's phone number, or backup plans. The question, who is Holden, at this moment is no longer a profile, but a test of ability to bear. When Claire is tired, when she is worried, when the incident comes, will he stand still, stand firm, and stand by? If Holden chooses to be transparent, willing to let Victoria question him within the bounds of respect, the sharp edges can be blunted. But if he is closed off, overly cautious, or shows discomfort in the face of probing, the cracks in Victoria's heart will immediately open. Moving forward, two scenarios are possible. 1. The conversation in LA creates a framework for compromise. Victoria gives in to safety checks, not interfering with the rhythm of love. Claire updates milestones, opening the door for her mother to understand Holden better. Holden demonstrates stability through small but repeated actions, punctuality, honesty, willingness to adjust. This scenario creates a cold but lasting peace, allowing the story to delve deeper into building a family rather than just managing crisis. 2. All attempts fail because trust is broken. Victoria is suspicious. Claire is defensive. Holden is withdrawn. Kyle is impulsive. Audra slips. At that point, the storm will explode. And Los Angeles is just the backdrop for a new battle between the right to love wrongly and the right to protect rightly. Whichever branch plays out, the core is still respected emotional logic. Victoria is suspicious because she loves her son and knows the world so well. Claire is drawn to Holden because after many stumbles, she deserves a sense of peace. Holden wants to prove himself in everyday life because the big promise has been too much. Kyle is easily distracted because he is losing his footing. Audra is easily drawn into the act of compensation because her pride is used to living on applause. When everything is reasonable, the tragedy lies not in right or wrong, but in right time and right way. Whoever can slow down a beat, think a step further, that person will win this mental game. In terms of drama, concentrating the characters in an open space like a coffee shop in LA is a perfect idea. The sound of the coffee machine, the sound of people coming in and out, the sunlight through the glass doors. Those ordinary things will highlight the abnormality of the emotions hanging between them. Just one poorly asked question, a frown that lasts longer than a breath, or a phone call at the wrong time and the wrong person can all slip through the fingers. If Holden is wise enough to take a step towards Victoria, and Victoria is soft enough to take half a step towards Holden, Claire will have what she needs most, a safe corridor for her love to grow over time. Not a stage where every day is a night of performance. On the contrary, if the distance is stretched by pride and doubt, Claire will turn her choice into a flare. And everyone knows that flares are beautiful, but burn out very quickly. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. And Kyle and Audra, they are like two people walking on the edge of a railing. Underneath are the thorns of regret. If they touch each other just to prove something to others, the result will be a scratch that is difficult to heal. But if they meet to remind each other of their self-worth, to endure loneliness without destroying the future, they will come out of the darkness more peacefully. Every path has a price. Which path Y&R chooses depends on whether the script wants to tell a story about maturity or revenge. Subscribe our channel for more latest update.